it's important to understand what a tactical nuclear weapon or a mini-nuke, which is now envisaged to be used against North Korea and Iran and various other countries, including Libya at one point, back in the 90s. Now, a mini-nuke is a relatively low-yield nuclear bomb compared to the Hiroshima bombs, to the larger bombs which have 100 times to 1,000 times the Hiroshima bomb. We're talking about explosive capacity yield between 1/3 and 12 times a Hiroshima bomb. Now these bombs are, that's where it gets very diabolical, these bombs are bunker buster bombs. They explode underground. I checked the documents, it's about 30 feet underground, and then it all goes up, you know, and produces a mushroom cloud. They have, as I said, the B-6111 bunker buster bomb has an explosive capacity between 1/3 and 6 times a Hiroshima bomb. In the matter of 7 seconds, 100,000 people perished in Hiroshima on the 6th of August, 1945. So that we're not talking about something which is, you know, trivial in terms of explosive capacity and killing capabilities. Yet, scientists on contract to the Pentagon have examined these bombs and have come to the conclusion, and I quote, "They are harmless to the surrounding civilian population because the explosion is underground," quote unquote. Now, could I ask, is anybody in this room who smokes? Okay, yeah. Could you tell me what's on the back of your pack of cigarettes?
Like a picture of, like, you know, like something wrong with a human being.
And you still continue smoking, right?
Yeah. On the back, I mean, there's like mountains and stuff too, so like kind of.
Okay. Now, what I like to convey to you is that this propaganda process, this disinformation, has been inserted into the military manuals. And it essentially what it means is changing the label on the cigarette pack, or changing the label on the tactical nuclear bomb. They call it tactical. In fact, it's exactly the same technology. They call it mini because they're smaller, but they're just as destructive. But then you have a label which has scientific, I mean, the guys who produce those labels in the research labs must have received a hell of a lot of money to actually provide legitimacy. And then what happened, and not many people know this, in 2002, they passed the Nuclear Posture Review in the Senate, which reclassified these tactical nuclear weapons as conventional weapons that could be used in the conventional war theater alongside the Kalashnikov. Now, why do I emphasize this particular type of bomb? Because in the most recent Nuclear Posture Review of 2017, which has just been released, they talk about a more usable nuclear weapon, which is part of a $1.2 trillion nuclear weapons program, which was launched, with all due respect to Trump, it was launched by Obama, but he supports it, of course, as well. And that means that they are intent upon further developing their nuclear capabilities. It's good for business, for the military-industrial complex, but at the same time, what has happened is that the public, the broader public, is totally unaware of the dangers of nuclear weapons. We weren't in that situation during the Cold War era. During the Cold War era, people knew about these things. Now they don't. And then the propaganda campaign is to say that these mini nukes are really they're just bombs that we use to go into the bunkers and so on, and they don't even address the issue of radiation. So there is a propaganda campaign, and Anne Wright, I think, put her finger on that there's a propaganda campaign within armed forces, within intelligence, within the governmental structures, which now is in the process of selling the notion that nuclear war is just part of the conventional weapons apparatus. It's not. All the scientists which are associated with anti-war movements will confirm this. Now, I wanted to address this question because, in effect, we're talking about North Korea. We could be talking about Iran as well. But the debate regarding nuclear war against North Korea is of crucial importance in view of the history of the country, in view of the fact that these extensive crimes against humanity were committed against the Korean people, and the fact that they have been threatened with nuclear weapons since 1950. Now let me make a small parenthesis in the history of nuclear weapons, because it's also very important that we understand that. And the role of Canada is important as well. The Manhattan Project started in 1939. It was a secret project to develop nuclear weapons capabilities to be used against Nazi Germany, allegedly. In 1939, the United States was not at war with Germany. In fact, quite the opposite. They were collaborating. The Ford Motor Company was deeply involved, and so was the Bush family. But that's another set of another debate. They started in 1939, and Canada and the United Kingdom became members of that project. It's a secret project. And of course, Canada played a role because we supplied the raw materials. The uranium was essentially from Canada. But the science, the technology there was a sharing agreement between these three countries in the development of the atom bomb. And I don't think that relationship has actually been suspended. We still are partners in relation to nuclear weapons. I haven't fully investigated Canada's participation in the Manhattan Project as something that we have to look into. But we are, in fact, also a de facto nuclear weapons state because we participated, or our scientists and engineers participated, and our military, in the development of the first atom bomb, which was dropped on Hiroshima on the 6th of August, 1945. So that is something we have to bear in mind. Now, there's another historical element which is absolutely crucial. It's not directly related to North Korea, but it certainly has implications on our understanding of the history of nuclear weapons and the nuclear arms race. As of 1942, that was after Pearl Harbor, when the United States had joined the Allies, and actually one of the Allies was the Soviet Union. Okay? The Soviet Union and the United States were allies during World War II. But as of 1942, the Manhattan Project developed a plan to bomb 66 major cities of the Soviet Union, as well as with 204 atomic bombs. That project was first envisaged in 1942. It was released internally as a secret document on the 15th of September 1945, barely a month, well, a bit more than a month after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and at the time when the Soviet Union and the United States were allies. Hiroshima is very important, of course, it's a landmark, but some analysts actually suggest that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were test cases for subsequent use of the atom bomb against the Soviet Union. And there are two. Now, yeah, if you look up here, you'll see the cities which are targeted. Okay, this starts with Moscow, Leningrad, and the large cities. It was 6 bombs per city, and then the smaller ones would go down to 4, 3, 2, and 1, 3 and 2. Now, what is significant is that these are official U.S. documents. They've been declassified. And the important issue is to be addressed is the fact that this was not a Cold War process. It was something formulated before the Cold War, and it was known to the Russians as of 1942. And they were developing, they didn't apply this plan because, first of all, they didn't have the capabilities of actually producing these 200 atom bombs. And then by 1949, the Soviet Union, which had knowledge of this plan, developed its own nuclear weapons. And what I'm suggesting here is that if the United States had not developed nuclear weapons under the Manhattan Project targeted at the Soviet Union or targeted at China, China was the target right from the beginning, October 1950. The People's Republic of China was inaugurated in October 1949. So barely a few months later, China was a target for a nuclear attack alongside the DPRK. And that's very important. The countries first targeted for a possible nuclear attack were the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China, and the DPRK. And that persistence, as far as the DPRK was expressed during a period of 67 years, going on 68, where each year they're threatened with nuclear attacks. Now, another element is that as of 1956, the United States starts to build nuclear weapons facilities in South Korea. Those facilities were subsequently dismantled when the technology evolved to the extent that they could attack North Korea from some other location, from a submarine or from the continental United States. But they went, I don't have the exact dates here, but it was something, yes, I think it went right through the 90s. Now, as far as South Korea, and this is not known either, South Korea was a nuclear weapons state. And it was separate, legally, it was separate from that of the United States, although it was very much supported by US technology. And they were a nuclear weapons state from the early 70s until the late 70s. and there's absolutely no discussion. And all of this infrastructure was there to threaten North Korea with a nuclear attack. And it's understandable under that historical context of persistent nuclear threats that the DPRK chose to develop its own nuclear weapons.